I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, September the 21st, brought to you in part by Vitalix. Try their new starter tubs for the first 21 days that you get calves in. It'll help reduce stress, reduce the number of pulls that you have, and increase saliva, which is important, getting those calves rooming going, which will get them on feed quicker. And you guys know that's the most important thing about straightening those new arrivals out. A CFAP number 2, that's the Corona Food Assistance Program. That's the free money you get from the government for being in the ag business, owning cattle. But we had that first one, and then you got, they did the 80%, and then you got the 20% more. Now we're at number 2. This is a whole separate payment now. You guys can get another $55 per head, not for cows and bulls, but for commodity stock. For all your calves or yearlings, you can get 55 bucks a head. It's your choice. You pick the day. It's the maximum number that you owned between April the 16th and August the 31st. So you get 55 bucks a head there, with a maximum for any one entity, which a lot of us are kind of glad to see that, at $250,000. But the pennies from heaven, guys, don't get used to that. But it's a good deal. It's going to help people out that's been struggling this year. 2020's been a tough year, and it doesn't matter what you've been doing. And if you hadn't been doing anything, 2020's been a tough year. But I tell you what, your government's helping you out quite a bit here. Appreciate it, accept it, don't get used to it. But last week, we started out higher on your futures market as African swine fever, the story had hit the end of the previous week about it coming into Germany there and affecting their pork shipments to Asia. So that means that they're going to be looking for other places, likely us, to get some of their protein needs, animal protein needs. And tell you what, even China has been taking some significant shipments of grain and protein, animal protein from us, so that's great. But your board started out higher there. It kind of leveled off a little bit middle of the week and actually went down some on feeder cattle as we started to see your corn starting to respond right here at harvest. You don't see that happen very often. Right as you guys are getting their combines out, getting them greased up and ready to roll, your corn's been going up. And I tell you what, ended the week at 378.5. That is a lot higher than what it kind of hung around all summer there. But good for those corn farmers out there. But it is going to affect your feed costs some. We talked about how early in the week your northern feeders just decided to dig in. Your feedlots were trying to buy finished fed cattle at the same level they had bought the previous week, just over $1, you know, like 101, 102, something like that. And they were doing that, and then they were putting those bids out there, and then finally at 103 they got the Southern Plains to cave because that was, you know, $1 to mostly $2 higher than they got before, and that's as much as they ever gain these days. But the Northern Plains continued to dig in. But on Thursday, a lot of them caved at 103, 3.5, because you know, they didn't want to miss the boat. But I tell you what, the ones that waited until Friday, we're ended up going to have a pretty decent cash trade for the week. The ones that ended up holding their cattle until Friday, they got a bonus. We're going to talk about that in a minute when I get on your fat cattle prices there. But the main reason that they were able to gain some ground in your cash fed cattle sales is there was just such a disparity between what our spot live cattle futures contract was and then where we were at on our markets. You know, they were way up there, almost 108 on the board for October, and we're getting right here at the tail of September here. And you know, they were getting 101, 102 for cattle the previous week, so that had to close a little bit. And there's been a lot of technical support on the board, so we didn't see that coming down anytime soon, and it really helped things out a little bit. But we'll get to talking about all that here pretty soon. But wanted to talk about the board, and we'll go through that, and I've got a lot of stuff to give you guys. I'm going to try to get through it all. Let's talk about the board for last week, October live cattle futures. Monday, like I said, started out strong, up $1.35. Tuesday was up 22 cents. Wednesday down 37. Thursday up a nickel, and then Friday up 57. And your cash trade actually, and also your CFAP announcement helped your board on Friday. But up 57 on Friday with October live cattle futures ending the week at 107.35. That was up $1.83 for the week. December 111.85, up $1.95. So that's pretty darn good for your board, as you know, a pretty decent performance in a week there, as we're getting into the fall of the year and there's always so many pressures on the cattle market. But feeder cattle, September, we're coming to a close there. This is going to have to come together, and it's just running really tight with what your index levels are now. But Monday on September, feeder cattle up $1.50. Tuesday was up 17. Wednesday down $1.17. Thursday down 57 cents, and then Friday up 95 with help from that CFAP announcement there. But September feeder cattle ended the week at 140.87. That was up 87 cents. October feeder cattle contract ended the week at 142.42. That was up $1.85. Now let's talk about your fat cattle trade. Through Thursday, they had sold 74,700 head. That's more than we thought. Nebraska come out with a lot of sales on Thursday, and then they were running way behind. The guys really dug in, and they weren't going to take any less, and then finally they decided to take the 103, 3.5, and they'd raised the dress bids a couple bucks, and so they were ready to take that, and they moved more cattle on Thursday than we thought. So pretty decent trade through Thursday of 74,700 head. You know, we like to have it somewhere around 100,000 or better to make us feel like we're at least trading enough cattle cash to kind of make a transparent, fair market. Well, Friday they come in, bought pretty significant numbers again. We're going to get pretty close to that 100,000 head for the week. But we say, wait a minute, your packers told us 2 or 3 weeks ago that they didn't need any cattle for September. What in the world are they doing? Give them more. They always need cattle. That's what they do. They're in the business of harvesting cattle. They always need them. Yeah, they may not be taking your shipment. They may not pull those cattle for another couple weeks, but if they're aggressively trying to get those cattle, let them do it. Let them put those cattle together. And you know, it's just it's ridiculous how every week we see cattle people fall for that packer psychology of we don't need any cattle, we're full, we don't have any room, and all that kind of stuff. That's what they do, guys, and they need cattle, and they wouldn't be coming out on a Monday or Tuesday or even a Wednesday if they didn't need them. They got to have them. But they got pretty aggressive this week, and the prices moved up through the week, kind of like they did the week before. But up through Thursday, your live steers and heifers sold from $1 to $1.06. That dollar was on a very, very few, you know, and in the southern plains and on some plainer kinds. Most of your cattle brought from 103 to 103.5 through Thursday. And then your weighted average price on live steers through Thursday was 103.54. That's pretty good through Thursday there. And then dress prices were 162 to 165. Pretty narrow spread there, and that's been the way it's been for quite a while here, but mostly 163. So that was better too. And your weighted average on dress steers was 162.93, and that was like $1 to mostly $2 higher. But then on Friday, and your weighted averages are going to be significantly higher whenever we get them on Monday, and I'll give them all that information to you on the next visit. But they're going to be significantly higher, your weighted average, because more cattle sold towards the top of your spread there. But on Friday, the Northern Plains sold cattle. Iowa 1,700 head confirmed, likely a few more, 103 to 105, mostly 104. We hadn't seen that all week. Significant trade at 104. So you can add another buck to that market on or being higher on your higher trend there in the northern plains. Had a few dress sales in Iowa confirmed from 162 to 164. That 164 would sure be on the top end. Nebraska, 6,500 head sold there on Friday after a pretty good trade there through the week, mostly on Thursday. But live sales in Nebraska, 103 to mostly 104. So that's a lot higher, guys. And it's $3 higher there, you know, 4 on the extreme. But 163 to 165 on a dress basis there. And that would be the 3 and sometimes 4 higher. Your live sales would be 2 and sometimes 3 higher. But pretty darn good. So that was the market end of the week in the northern plains is 104 and 165. That's something you can kind of work with. We've gained back what we lost there earlier in the month there. In the southern plains, Kansas and Texas, your market is 103. Ended the week, had a few cleanup sales in Kansas that way, but nothing in Texas. They had sold several cattle that way earlier. But pretty good trade there late in the week, and we should be on a higher swing. If we can hold the board together, we should be able to gain another $1 or $2 this week. Sure, be steady. You know, stick your heels in the ground one more time, guys. Box beef cutout values are lower, and we've been talking this week and last how this is a time of year where your packer margins normally tighten a little bit, but you guys got to be strong and ask more for cattle. If you don't ask more for them, it's hard to get more. But their wholesale beef prices are coming down a little bit. You guys need to get all you can out of this market position while you can, and it's going to tighten their margins a little bit, and they'll squall and squeal a little bit, but they're still making money. They're still making, you know, right now, $300 and some a head likely. You guys would love to have a dose of that. It's been a long time since you've had any of it. But choice cuts, this is a weighted average on all of last week's volume. Wholesale choice cuts, 215.87. That was $6.25 lower than the weighted average from the previous week. Select, your weighted average select price on all of last week's sales, $215.18. That was $2.42 lower than the weighted average from the previous week. Pretty significant movement at the lower price levels. And actually your Friday quotes were a little bit lower than those weighted averages, so it's come down quite a bit. But 838 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings, that's pretty good movement right there. And it happened because your packers had to come down a little bit on your price levels. I tell you guys, they set the price. It's just how much of it they want to move to what they had to do, and they had to back off a little bit to get their buyers to come in and take more product. Your slaughter was running real good all week. We were running ahead of a year ago all week. We couldn't really compare it to previous week because we had that holiday in there, but we were running well ahead of a year ago levels all week until Saturday. And then Saturday was disappointing and we didn't end up. 645,000 for the week last week on cattle. That was down 16,000 from the same week a year ago. But you look at the Saturday slaughter, it was 55,000 this past Saturday, which was disappointing. The previous Saturday, it was 95,000, and the same Saturday a year ago, it was 73,000. So these packers aren't getting real aggressive on stepping it up. They could move through more of these cattle and get these carcass weights down if they really wanted to, but that's their ace in the hole, is keeping these carcass weights up, because the head counts we've pretty well got in check. It's just the carcass weights, and you know, we talked how much heavier they're running, 25 pounds heavier than they were the same time a year ago on your dressed weights. That's significant, guys. And you think, well, how much difference could the carcass weights make? Well, so far your slaughter year to date is down 4.5% compared to a year ago, but beef production is only down 1.8%. That's how much those heavier carcasses can make that much difference. So it's significant, guys. Let's talk about what else is going on out there. You know, I always talk about your high cattle. You know, I love to give the high quotes, and I love to give the sale barns some exposure on the high quotes, but sometimes we want to know what some cattle can cost that might make some money, some cattle that we can upgrade, some cattle that we could buy worth the chips and improve and then try to make some money on them. You guys know, good friends with Ellis and Carter Cattle Company there, Santo, Texas, which is just west of Weatherford. Tell you what, he's got buyers all in that central Texas country and all the sales out there, and he's a big shipper there, and he can put some cattle together for you worth the money. I'm going to give you some quotes like I do a lot of times. These are steers and bulls mixed, mostly. These are delivered prices. They're delivered to the Texas Panhandle, central Oklahoma, and even up into the edge of Kansas. So these would be delivered prices. He gave me some quotes on some 3-weight steers and bulls, 300 to 400 pound steers and bulls, range from 168.5 to 176. These are pot loads of them, guys, delivering up there with a delivered price. Some 400 to 500 pound steers and bulls had some loads going that ranged in price from 144.5 to 159, delivered to Europeans. Some had one load of plainer steers and bulls, weighed 500 pounds on the dot. They were tick plain, had some straight twos on them even, but but not the worst things in the world. But still, 500 pounds at 111. That doesn't sound too bad at all. How about some 500 to 600 pounders? 130.275 to 140.160. He had a load of some plainer kind, but a little on the better kind of the planers. 650 pounds, 111.40. How about some heifers? You just had some individual loads there that I'm going to give you. Load weighed 358, delivered at 148.50. Pretty good kind. Load weight 452, pretty good kind of heifers, number one kind, 134.35. Had a load 468, had a planer end on them at 128.50. Load weight 563 on the heifers, had a planer end on them at 115.50. And all these are delivered prices. You get a hold of them. You can find more information at ellisoncartercattle.com. And you can find contact information from them there. If you want them to process the cattle, they can do that. If you want them to mass treat them, they can do that. He even told me if you want to run PI tests on those calves, they can do that for you for $2 a head and give you the results. So there's that. What else do we have? I want to give a shout out to MidSouth Cattle Company. I was down there over the weekend and went and worked that bull sale at St. Francisville, Louisiana, which is down there by Baton Rouge, and had a good sale down there. I tell you what, as snappy a sale as I've been to in a long, long time. I tell you what, there was a good crowd of people there. Everybody was having a good time. They had the jambalaya out there. They had the adult beverage out there. Everybody was listening to music. Everybody was looking at the good Brangus cattle that they had on offer there. And I tell you what, pretty darn good sale there. MidSouth Cattle Company and the Neal Family Ranch. They had an average on their Brangus bulls over $5,800 a head, and on their bred registered females over $7,500 a head. Wow. And I tell you what, it was active on the internet, had people all over the country bidding on there like crazy. And I want to give a shout out to High Point Sales and Marketing there. Garrett Thomas and Andrew Conley, they did a really good job putting that sale together. And particularly Andrew Conley is the auctioneer side of that, and he did a hell of a good job selling that sale. Tell you what, he got a fire built under it, and he kept stoking that fire all day long. And I tell you what, it was just as active at the end of the sale on the commercial types as it was when they started on their premier ones. But good shout out for those guys. What else is going on around the circuit? I want to give a holler for a friend of mine, Bill Martin, and you guys remember that name. Bill Martin's been around for a long time. He originated in this part of the country, in the Texas Panhandle country here. Worked in market reporting like I did. He got into buying cattle, marketing cattle. He worked with Montfort Feeders, which eventually turned into Five Rivers. You guys remember that. And then he moved out west on the west side of the mountains, was buying a lot of cattle in the country. ran the big sale barn there at Loma, Colorado on the western slope. He's returned home, and you think, why would people go back there? I don't know, people. There's no grass and there's no water, but it's a pretty good way of life, and we kind of like it around here. But my friend Bill Martin has come back as the new manager of the new auction facility on the west side of Amarillo. Formerly Amarillo West Stockyards. They've cleaned the slate. I mean, it hadn't been around too long, but they're having a re-grand opening here happening on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to going out there. They've got a good sale lined up, as big a sale as they've had yet lined up, and they're under a new name and everything. The new name is Lone Star Stockyards. Maybe a little cheesy, but also pretty catchy. So I think that ought to make it work. But I tell you what, if Bill Martin can't make that sale barn work, nobody can. And I wish him all the luck in the world. And I'd try to help him any way I can. But we need a viable auction market in the Amarillo area, and I'm hoping that sale barn works. The buyers want it to work. They just got to get the cattle in there. Got to get some of those eastern New Mexico calves over here. But you guys come out to the grand opening there and give me a holler, because I'm going to be out there too. Now let's talk about your feeder cattle markets. Brought to you in part by Joplin Regional Stockyards. Tell you what, they've got a pretty good sale here on a Monday, kind of a typical sale. They're going to start early because it's still kind of hot. Flies are sticky. Nobody wants to sit around there all afternoon. They're going to get their work done and get out of there. They are expecting about 6,500 head for the regular Monday sale here at Joplin Regional Stockyards. Want to wish a happy anniversary over the weekend to Mark Harmon and his poor wife. That has to put up with him day in and day out. But I tell you what, they've got a great relationship. They enjoy playing golf together, and there's a special place in heaven for her for putting up with him for all these years. But let's talk about your real-time index on DV auction. Ended the week 141.13 based on an 800-pound steer up through the middle 12 states. That was 30 cents higher than the end of the previous week. But we want to talk about what your cash feeder trend was in your sale barns. For yearling type cattle, basically cattle that can go to the feedlot and finish in that February to April board there, those were $3 to $5 higher. And those would be sure your yearling feeders, what few green grass yearling feeders there are available. There's not many of those left. A handful of them would be some of those bigger, long-time weaned, back-grounded calves. They could be in there too. $3 to $5 higher on them. Good demand for feeding cattle. But you think, well, the index was only up 30 cents for the week. There's a lot of 7-weight calves that are sneaking in that index, because and many of them unweaned, ballers, no shots or anything. It's sucking the index down. And I tell you what, the calves are kind of hard to sell. You think, big wide weather temperature swings every day, 40 degrees in most cases. It's nothing for it to be in the high 40s or low 50s overnight, all through the middle part of the country, and then get up in the high 80s and 90s during the day. That's hard on calves, especially whenever you jerk them off their mom, haul them to town, put them through a lot of stress. They go to the sales, they stand around, or they're mixing noses and things with a bunch of calves that's come from all over, and then you ship them somewhere. It's tough. Calves sold unevenly steady to $3 lower with severe discounts for ballers. Guys, you think you're going to sneak them in there. It's getting where they won't do it anymore. Your buyers are more concerned about whether those calves are weaned, what day they were weaned, and whether you got a reputation for lying about whether they've been weaned or if you're telling the truth. But you go out in the pens in these sale barns for the sale, you can't hear yourself think from the bawling. So they know that the bulk of those calves are all ballers, and they're hard to straighten up, and it's hard on the calves. If you've got ballers and you're not willing to wean them, I would save them until after a hard freeze. They'll sell a lot better after a hard freeze. You cannot guesstimate what the discount's going to be on your calves. If you've got some fleshy calves that come in, especially males that haven't been worked, and then you haven't given them any shots, not even a modified live, which is a sin if you haven't already given them that. I tell you what, the discounts are so severe, especially if they're fleshy. You can't guesstimate what they're going to be. And you know, I always say if you raise the best kind of cattle and you do as much work for them as you can, it's pretty easy to guess what they might bring whenever you get ready to market them. They'll bring somewhere towards the top of the market. But when you don't do any of those things, the discounts, it's just impossible to guess what it's going to be. But let's talk about some top quotes that we saw around the circuit, and it's all on yearlings, because I tell you what, the calves, it's just the time of year that they're not selling that well, guys, and it's just supply and demand. There's a big supply of them and not a very big demand. How about Bloomington Livestock Exchange, Bloomington, Wisconsin? They can sell feeder cattle there. They sold 2 loads, 843 pounds feeder steers, 145 and a quarter. How about a sale barn I've never heard of before? Don't know anybody there, but one of my listeners sent me some information there and I checked it out. But Burke, South Dakota, Burke Livestock Auction there, kind of south central South Dakota, an up and coming sale barn there, kind of getting to be a regional market, sold 171 head of backgrounded steers. I tell you what, these haven't been turned out. They've been on a ration, basically been in a yard. Backgrounded steers weigh 1079, come through the ring there in Burke, South Dakota, bring 123.60 on the average. That's pretty good. Top quote that I saw anywhere, Winter Livestock, Winter, South Dakota. And you think, man, why are these cattle selling so good way up in the northern plains? And it's really above where your concentrated feeding is. Well, if you watched earlier this past week, I talked about some places like Glasgow, Montana, and things like that. Talked to some people up there, and there's Canadian interest coming south of the border and buying cattle to feed. And they're not coming maybe all the way down into South Dakota, but if they're picking north of there, it's gonna bump the demand for those guys that are up there in the north that need cattle. And we can't cuss the Canadians, guys. They sell them better than we do, and they come down here and buy ours, and they take them north and they don't bring them back. They take them away after that, and it helps. But Winter, South Dakota, Winter Livestock Auction, look at these loads of big 8-weight steers, heavy 8-weight steers. They were weighing between 866 and 882. That's nearly 900 pounds. With some prices like this, 148.75 to 149.10. That's pretty good. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.